Hi, everybody. This is David P. France coming to you from Basel, Switzerland. Before we get this video interview started, I'd like everyone out there to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube and BitChute channel, and also share this video with your friends and your family. Let them know what we're up to. This is David P. France TV. We are a platform for creators and creative people, artists, inventors, small business owners, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs. And today I want to introduce you to someone who I met fairly recently. We've been going back and forth on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very, very good. It's a great platform. This is Dr. Zhu Shen, and she is a former biotech CEO turned documentary and filmmaker, right? And also producer. And before we get started, there's a film that we showed at the top of this interview, and I want you to describe or to explain to the audience exactly what this film is and your association with the film.
Well, thank you, David, first of all, for inviting me to your show. I'm honored to be here to talk to you and to the viewers of your channel. And we're fellow creatives, so I feel this kinship with you. So thank you again for having me. So your question, are you asking about the documentary film itself? Or are we talking about the animated short that led to the documentary?
Well, now that you've said it, we're talking about the animation.
Right.
The animation. And of course, we will then talk about your documentary because one sort of comes first and the other is second.
Yes, yes.
But describe to us the animation, because the animation, it's not the starting point, but it's a good, it gives the audience a good background of how your story unfolds. And we'll go back to the beginning of the story once you give us a little bit about how this short came together.
So thank you, David. So Chongyu's Journey, the 5.5-minute animated short film that eventually qualified for an Oscar in 2019, is a look back into the life of my late husband in the eyes of his beloved son and my son too, Perry, as a young animator. So it's a looking back of a father's life through the art and animation of his son. So that's in essence Chongyu's journey story. And how that film got started was because my husband Chongyu, who both him and I came from China in the late 80s for graduate school. And he was a Stanford trained cancer researcher and biotech founder whose work is to develop antibody cancer drugs for patients all over the world. And the irony and tragedy of our life is that in 2012, he was dying of cancer, the very disease he dedicated his whole life trying to cure. Yet his own cancer, the squamous cell skin cancer, had no effective treatment. So in the July of 2012, upon learning that he had 2 weeks to live from the oncologist, our artistically talented son, Perry, who was 12 years old at the time, who actually already made an animated film a year earlier about a young Holocaust survivor that also qualified in the Academy Award consideration. So Perry said to me, when he learned his dad had 2 weeks to live, he said, "Mom, I think now I'm ready to animate Daddy's story. I want to show him drawings, new drawings every day to give him hope so that he has something to look forward to every day." So even if I can extend his life by a few days, it would be worth it. So I was just profoundly moved by my son's profound love, deep love for his father, for my husband. And I thought to myself, how can I not support this? I'm going to do everything in my power to make it a reality, because it's a promise from a son to his father. And it's such a meaningful project. And I also thought, I know that no matter what happens, this is going to be an amazing story by itself. So I decided to pick up a camera. I started shooting Perry because I thought it's going to be a difficult process. I can see that. I don't know what the details it will be, but I know it's going to be an amazing story to show my son's growth, both as an artist and as a person. And so that's what I decided to do. And I told Perry, I said, while you're making Changyou's Journey, I'm going to make my own documentary film. It's called Journey of 1,000 Miles, using the Chinese famous proverb. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And that was my first step.
So you knew implicitly that recording or keeping a record of this process was important. Did you know, or did you make the decision at that moment, okay, I'm going to make a documentary eventually, or side by side, or was it more like, I just want to have this as a record of our son making this animation?
That's a great question, David. So it's all of the above. I want to have a record of his journey through this creative process and what we're going to encounter together, making this film a reality. And then I know that he's going to learn a lot of lessons. I will too. So I want to document this whole process, and also knowing that there is a possibility that maybe the film would never come to fruition, right? So then this film may not be so relevant anymore. However, just having the memory and our experience together in this life, it will be so meaningful to me, because I know how fast kids grow up. You know, he was 12 years old then, and he's gonna grow up through puberty and adolescence, and he will eventually become a young man. And so all of that will be documented through my eyes and the eyes of the camera. So that will be such treasured memory for perhaps if he ever has children, either biological or adopted, then we have this living history, if you will, of our family, what we go through in life and what happened in our effort to create art and to honor my husband's memory and legacy.
Sure. Let's talk about your son just for a bit before because I have questions also about your process of coming from China and moving to the US. But with regard to your son, what signs could you see from him that he was a gifted filmmaker, or he was a gifted creator and artist?
Yeah. So, the signs are everywhere, David. So I would say that he's such a natural storyteller. He was born in 2000, the year of the dragon. So he was dragon head, born in February. And so he always loved story. I started telling him stories when he was just a few months old, like starting to understand language and trying to learn language and uttering his first word. Because I love story as a child growing up myself in China during the Cultural Revolution. And, just be drawn to moving pictures. That's sort of the only entertainment available to the masses during my formative years growing up in China. And so storytelling is always a part of what draws me, what moves me. And so I would read him books about Chinese legend, like these fairy tales that we have, and storybooks with plants and animals. He loved living things. So he has this profound compassion, like everything is connected to him at that age. So I remember David, when Perry was about 2 years old, when he can talk a lot. And then after I tell him a fairy tale, let's say the Jade Rabbit, and this lady who flew to the moon after taking this drug that made her body floating away to the moon. And so Perry, very interestingly, started to make changes of those legendary fairy tales. He would put himself into the story. For example, he would say, this Jade Rabbit, he loves me so much that he would come from the moon to the earth and he would spot me and play with me. And so I just love that. I thought, this is amazing, this imagination.
Sure.
And he would create all these stories that he would make up, where he's a part of it, I'm a part of it. Like he would say, oh, mommy, how I met you is that you were flying, I was flying the sky. And then I saw all these people on earth and I just spotted you. I love you. And I just, I decided that you're going to be my mom. Like this magical thinking during a special period in a child's life, that's when their imagination is just boundless, because they didn't know about physical limitations. Sure. And I so love that about him. And I knew that he's just a natural storyteller. So the storytelling became a part of our routine, that I would take him on these walks in our neighborhood park, which is like 2 minutes away from our house. And I would carry this digital audio recorder, and then he would just start to tell stories, like on the spot, just make things up. And they were just so charming and full of childhood wonder. He would make up stories about, this little frog called Chili, and then this friend Newt, their adventure together. So that's his world. So he would create whatever is part of his world at the time and make them into stories. Wow. And that tradition lasted forever. Like even nowadays, sometimes he would tell stories. We would do that recording. So that's part of our tradition. And I found out that he's very gifted in art, in terms of visual art and drawing. Right.
So that we saw
3 years old.
Beginning, sure.
Yeah, 3 years old.
3 years
he was
old.
born in San Francisco. When we were living there, when Changyu did his postdoc at Stanford, and then later into biotech field, doing cancer research. So Perry was born in 2000, and we were in the Bay Area, and then we moved to San Diego for Chongyu's job in 2003, and stayed ever since. So this is our home now. And so with Perry, what happened was, we started to get art supplies, and then there was a neighborhood kid next door, and then they became friends. And this little kid had this mold that's made from plastic of a dinosaur. And so Perry took that, he started to trace the outline, and there was a dinosaur. And then he started to move the little piece on the paper, and to then trace it and make it into a different animal. I was stunned. It's like his mind is so expansive. Right. And then he started to draw other things. That's like, it just happened spontaneously without any prompting by me. It's like he was just into that. Then he had a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Prince, from the Del Mar Hills Nursery School. That was one of his favorite teachers. So Mrs. Prince would teach the kids, like you really show them tools how to, create art with some simple setup. And so Perry started to draw very, very prolifically, several pieces of drawings a day. And I love that, because I also did drawing in my childhood in China. going to this Peking Children's Palace. So that was part of my own upbringing, encouraged by my parents. But in
At what age, I'm sorry, at what age was he at this point when he was drawing prolific? At what point did it?
He was, I would say he started at 3 years old. And then by the time he was 4 and 5, oh, he would just like draw nonstop. Yeah. Then he went to China with Changyu when he was 5 years old in 2005, when Changyu took a job as a professor and investigator doing translational research, cancer drug development in the area of antibody drug development, so in Guangzhou. And he took Perry with him with the goal of, immerse Perry, our son, in traditional Chinese culture and language. So by the time Perry would return back to San Diego at age 6 to start first grade, then he would be well grounded in our mother culture, if you will. So that was the idea. And then, I became a virtual single mom when Changyu was spending the bulk of his time, like every month he would go back for 2 months and come back for 1 month. That's sort of a cross-Pacific family life. And I was raising Perry, primarily on my own from first grade on. And then he would come, summer, and every 2 months he would spend about 3 to 4 weeks with us. So that's our life. And I kept encouraging Perry to make more art. And he loves movies. And then we got into movie reviews in 3rd grade.
So he was writing movie reviews in 3rd grade.
Yeah. So how that started, David, it was that in 3rd grade, his wonderful teacher, Miss Jolie Harris, during the parent-teacher conference, she was telling me, your son is really advanced at reading. He would read, recognize the code words at the high school level. And I was blown away because I know when I took Perry to the local Del Mar bookstore, he would just sit there for the entire night, just reading everything voraciously. And he could use fancy words, like some words I didn't even know. Like he's just really quick with words and language. And so I thought, here's this, my young boy, so advanced, but how can I help him develop further? So I thought, how about have him write book reviews? He loves books. So then I just said to Perry, no, let's do some book review. And he started that. And then later on, he asked me to watch animation film with him. And I thought, well, animation film is great because he loves story and so visual. And every year, the only handful of, amazing animation films are out for the entire family to see. I felt it could reach more kids and families that way by doing animation review and family movies. And so I got him to start writing movie reviews. And then in less than a year, he was featured on the CBS Evening News and later on NPR. So that was sort of the start of my tiger mom phase, if you will.
well, let me go back because there's some questions that I have with regard to you and your late husband. I mean, when I hear how you came to the United States, that in and of itself is a fascinating story to me. And I want you to quickly tell me, your background is that you were gifted. It's clear that you were gifted, or you are gifted, right?
Thank you. I hope so.
But so was your late husband. He was, would you call him a prodigy? You guys both
I think he was a scientific genius. In his graduate school years, he authored a first highly referenced, research article about the translational mechanism protein translation. It was published on Science magazine,
Mhm.
and it was in our school, University of Colorado School of Medicine. It was unheard of for a lowly graduate student. That's the lowest, in the totem pole. And then to have a first author paper on Science magazine. And it was a groundbreaking research to create a circular RNA molecule to delineate how the translational machinery gets started. And so he got his name on 2 patents with his professor, Dr. Peter Sarno, who now is a professor at Stanford University. So I would say that, to me, he was like this amazing scientist with this brilliant mind. And he was brainstorming and helping like so many people in his lab when they have problems and couldn't get experiments to work. They would go to him and he would write on napkin, like, how about this? How about that? Just helping them problem solve. So he's very well known for that.
Yeah. And let's go back to you. I mean, you started in medical or research, from what I understand, but eventually your gifts for art and creativity came out. And then once you tell us that, I'm going to go right into your documentary. So give us a background about you and your family and sort of how you came up and how you made decisions about what you were going to do for a career. I'm always interested in this kind of stuff.
Thank you, David. So when I was a girl growing up in China during the Cultural Revolution, I was actually born right before the start of the Cultural Revolution in China, which started in 1966 and lasted 10 years to 1976. And that is a devastating period of Chinese history, as a lot of people know about. So I grew up during that period, and I was surrounded by these propaganda art posters about the revolution, about Chairman Mao. And so those art were seen everywhere on the street, posted on boards and everywhere. And so those kind of art are devoid of any personality, of any of the artist's personal experience. It's made for a cause, to advance the ideology of that period. And so that's what I grew up with. And I didn't feel any connection with it. However, I did feel connection with cinematic art, with moving pictures, because that's the only mass entertainment available to us, kids and adults alike. So I remember always, going to this open field to see communist country movies, including those from China, obviously, but from countries like North Korea, from Yugoslavia, from especially the Soviet Union. And even though they were full of propaganda, but still, to a young mind that's so hungry for knowledge, for stories, I still was drawn to these pictures. And they were, such a joyful moments in my childhood. And so I grew up with it. And then later on, when China opened up, then more and more Western films were brought in. We have Hollywood productions, we have these old classics, from Casablanca to Gone with the Wind. And I was just blown away by the storytelling, by the fascinating stories from another world that now I can immerse myself in and escape from reality for 2 hours, right? It was amazing. And I think I developed an appreciation for storytelling. So that's sort of my upbringing. And then my parents were so loving and so insightful and proactive. So as you know, during the Cultural Revolution, all the young kids, upon graduating from high school, they do not go to college because colleges were all closed off during that time. So where do they go? They're sent to the countryside to do hard labor, just like their parents, sent to the countryside labor camp, like my parents did. And so my parents thought, if our daughter has developed some artistic skills and can draw well, then at least she could potentially escape a little bit of the hardship of labor in the countryside, and could at least do some propaganda art, which is very much in demand. So that's their own practical motivation to protect me. And so they got me enrolled in this very prestigious Peking Children's Palace drawing class. So I learned that during my middle school years. And I'm eternally grateful for them, because even though my drawing skills in the end weren't needed, because I was not sent to the countryside, China opened up, and in 1977, all the colleges opened up to admit students. So I graduated from high school in 1982. I was able to go to college. So that skill was not used in this context. However, it empowered me with this vision and this aesthetics and appreciation for finer things in life, for beauty. Yeah. So I am so grateful for my parents for giving me that exposure in my early life. And from then on, art is always within me. It's reflected in my choice of what I buy, what I wear, like, art that I purchase during travel, like all these things. It's just such a core part of me.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question. I mean, we introed this interview by saying that you were a former Biotech CEO,
right?
Turn film and documentary filmmaker, producer. So how did you become a CEO of a biotech company? Just for clarity and at the audience.
Sure.
Understand, because there's, we're talking right now very creatively, and we're talking about the documentary, but there is also a side of you that is, I would say, dare to say, very businesslike, very methodical and linear, can be linear, right?
Analytical,
Analytical.
Thinking, right. So in the context, David, of the Cultural Revolution, so after that was over, China opened up, and I was able to go to college. So most parents at our time want their kids to pursue a STEM career. Why? Yeah. Because you will not be persecuted for your thoughts and your art.
Just to be clear,
it was dangerous.
STEM meaning?
STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, and math. So STEM, STEM career. And so really that's important. Like hardcore analytical, and I excelled in both, even though my heart is in the arts. I did well in math, sciences, like everything, chemistry, physics, you name it, I can do them well. I was among the top students in my high school. The high school which is affiliated with Peking University.
Right.
And so my dad wanted me to become a doctor, because he said, imagine like all these leaders, all these people who are doing all kinds of any line of work people engage in, no matter what they do, they all need to see a doctor when they get sick.
Right.
So you will never be out of a job, and you will never be at risk of having your thought being persecuted. And so he felt it would be the safest career and very much in demand. And then he picked the best medical school in China, Peking Union Medical College, which was funded with money from funds from the Rockefeller Foundation in the early 1900s. Because they want to have a legacy of supporting this first-class teaching hospital, introducing Western medicine to China. That's their vision. So our school only picked 30 students each year during my time to be admitted, because they want to cultivate not just great doctors, but visionaries and leaders for China's healthcare. So that's their vision. And I was among, those who were admitted to the school in the year of 82. And so I became a medical student. And then later with my then boyfriend, Changyu, to apply for graduate school and admitted to the US. So I have my PhD. You know, I had a collect call, you know,
You have an
to
MBA?
get myself, yeah, into University of
Not
Wisconsin-Madison.
Not bad at all, would you say?
Yeah, so you know, I tend to think outside the box thanks to my dad, who inspired me to, you know, he said, you're only limited by your own imagination. So don't follow the crowd and think of ways that you can make things happen. So that's what I always tell myself, like, think of it in a different way. What can you do to get this done? So I'm the cold call queen.
And look, and look, just to be clear with, or to be honest, or to be forthright with the audience, this is how you and I met. I mean, we met because
that's right. That's right, David.
It was a variation of a cold call. And so I wrote something on LinkedIn, and you responded, and your response was so unique because I wrote something that was sort of out of the box, right? And you were like,
you were commenting on the side-by-side profile comparison of an artist, like two profiles. So the poster said, what do you think of these and which one do you like? And you wrote something that was just amazing. I thought I have to comment on that because I have some thoughts. And so that's how I still remember this British artist. Yeah.
Right. Well, because both pictures, the comment or the question was, which one was better, right?
Exactly.
Considering what the artist was trying to convey. And I saw both and I said, well, they equally emit or communicate creativity, right? Just because he had a tie on and he was supposedly all buttoned up in one, the creativity was still oozing out of him, you see, right? So I saw him no different than, I mean, no different. The energy was similar.
How it became a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, tell us how this is. So we know that at the top of this interview, we showed the animation. We have a little bit of background about your family. And we know now that you started filming Perry as he's starting to make this. So give us a little bit more about how this is coming together at this moment.
Yeah, so I would say this to you that I am really inspired by my son, Perry, his artistry, his storytelling with the whole process of making CHANGYOU'S JOURNEY. And I saw his tremendous growth from the first animated short that he did with Bill Plimpton about a young Holocaust survivor called Ingrid Pitt, Beyond Borders, that was invited to screen at DreamWorks, introduced by his hero, personal hero, the How to Train Your Dragon director, Dean DeBlois, who's a huge fan of his from his first interview and press junket and such. And so I was just so amazed and inspired by Perry's artistry. Just imagine that he was able to condense my beloved husband's life, 49 years of his life, from a country boy in China, like, to become the first college student in the entire village. It was his pride and joy of his parents. And then later, to go to graduate school in China and then coming to the States to study. And I joined him too in 1988. And then, founding the company, having cancer, like all this. It's a very, very rich and incredible life. And 49 years of that life, condense it into 4.5 minutes plus 1 minute credit. Right. It's like, how do you do that? But he managed to tell that story so movingly, and people just like everywhere were crying after the screening, come to us and thank us for making the film because it touched their core. And it really speaks about the love of family, about the connection, about memory, about our legacy. How do we memorialize our loved one? So I just thought wow, I mean, short films are sometimes harder to make than feature, because feature, you have the luxury of time. You know, in short, you have to tell that story with the economy of frame, right? The time.
Right.
And so I thought he's an amazing artist, and I'm learning so much from him. So I thought, in my own journey of making this feature film, Journey of 1,000 Miles, what I'm going to do is to learn from my son and to brainstorm with him, because he's more of a master than me. I'm a beginner, right? So we've been brainstorming for years and years, and it was I would say 2018, from our trip back from China. At the airport, he all of a sudden said to me, he said, "Mom, I think for your documentary film, Journey of 1,000 Miles, you're as much of a protagonist as me, if not more so." And I was stunned, because all this time I was thinking of documenting my own son's journey, you know, his personal growth, his artistic growth, and all that. I was behind the scene. I was, you know, holding the camera, shooting everything. But then his words just really hit me. I thought he was absolutely right, because I've grown so much, you know, from a tiger mom in my early days, dictating, controlling my son's life, you know, telling him what to do, like arrange everything, all the directors, getting him interviews and feature on media, like everything. It was just maddening, and it's like dizzying to imagine like all the things I've done with him, because I so want him to succeed, and I saw the tremendous talent he has. So it's out of love, but I didn't have the awareness I have now. But I later on saw, even though I wouldn't admit that I was a tiger mom, I didn't see myself that way. You know, in 2011 or so, when that famous book came out from Amy Chua, The Battleheim of the Tiger Mother, I thought I was better than the tiger mom, because I was helping my son in areas that he excels at, that he loves. But it was years later I realized that I was very much a tiger mom myself. That's when I am becoming the Zen mom. Okay, so this journey together, I was humbled by the artistry of my son. I was inspired by him. He taught me how to use a camera. Like, he taught me so many practical things on how to make a documentary film, because that's what he was doing at his high school as a producer and writer for the award-winning Canyon Crest Academy TV station. And
so let me ask you a question real quick. So
yeah,
you started making the documentary around the time, or was it before, like at the same time that he started to formulate his animation, and then you just
when
kept
he
filming?
announced he's making the animation about my husband, I said, I'm taking the camera to film you. I'm making the documentary, you know, Journey of 1,000 Miles. But I would say, in fact, filming started even before that. And David, the reason is because it's not like I'm thinking of making a film already. It's to keep the memory alive. I want to capture my husband in his last few months of his life, so that when Perry grows up, he would still know what his daddy looked like, sounded like, and moved like, right? To capture that in you know, in videos and in photos. And that's what I was really, really keen on, because I don't want him to grow up and then like the memory fades off with no, you know, evidence of that. So I'm very much about archiving everything.
Give us the timeline about, in terms of when the filming started and then when it was completed, just to give people an idea what.
Sure. So the filming started, actually, I would say in 2011, a year after my husband, or actually a few months after my husband was diagnosed with metastatic squamous cell skin cancer. And I realized that, you know, once you have that, it's like a, it's not an outright death sentence, but the prognosis is very, very poor once you have lymph nodes, metastases. And so I was already preparing for what may happen that I
Sure.
don't want to admit to myself. So I started to film Changyu and Perry together,
Right.
sharing stories and cooking, like doing things together. And when we still went out to a national park during that time for 1 year. So I wanted to film and photograph everything. So that's when we started. And then, you know, we filmed the memorial service, we filmed the surprise, Father's Day party 1 month before my husband passed away. And then filming continued on even to nowadays, that we are, like, my son is a rising senior at UC Irvine. That's his
Right.
college that he chose to be, where he could be both independent and then connected to me, coming home every 2 to 3 weeks.
Close enough. Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. It's like
Yeah.
ideal situation. And being a Regent scholar, he loved the school. So we would see each other, fairly often, and we would talk absolutely every week about what's going on in each other's life. So the filming continued throughout his life. I want to capture all the milestones, graduation, move to campus, like all of that, and including intimate moments of us cooking dinner, having friends over, and him with Coach Walker, for example, who was instrumental in helping us finish CHANGYOU'S journey.
Yeah.
He was a role model. He has been a role model, has been a father figure.
Just to be clear, Coach Walker is the coach that you hired to help you and Perry really, how do you say, reach the potential, or is that I may be putting words in your mouth.
Yeah,
really sort of elevating the let's say elevating your game. It's really cliche.
Absolutely.
Really,
Coach Walker Clark. Yeah, he was introduced to me by a dear girlfriend of mine locally, Rose Fletcher, who worked with Coach Walker herself, and just really loved his work, and thought that given Coach Walker's personal experience in acting in movies and TVs very successfully, and helping other aspiring actors and stars, young stars of Hollywood and Broadway, get them roles. So that's sort of his specialty for years. And so my girlfriend thought that Walker could help Perry advance his career in the film business. So that's sort of the original motivation. But what I'll tell you, David, is that when Perry and I met Coach Walker for the first time, he just blew us away with his amazing insight and connecting with us on the personal level. He was the rare person, adult person, who never praised Perry for his accomplishment like so many people did, and asked about his movies, all his activities. He went straight to the tough questions, asking Perry about things that he didn't have an answer for.
Sure.
And then Perry, immediately after that session, he said to me, he said, "Mom, I don't know. I don't care how much, you have to pay to get Walker. I want to work with him because he is the right person." And I said to Perry, "Absolutely. I want him for you because I know he's going to help us, not necessarily like get you Hollywood jobs, but I can see the potential that he can help us connecting and clean the mess, if you will, in our relationship, our challenges, that he can help us reconnect as true family, as mother and son, and move forward."
Let me before we go on, we have a Jazzy Ann waiting in the waiting room. Yes. And I'm going to bring her in just to give an audience a little bit more clarity. You started making this documentary, and you actually started finding people to assist you in the production of the documentary. So we're going to talk to someone who's part of your team.
Yes.
And she's going to give us some insight, perhaps from someone that is not in our generation, but someone who's really moving in and through the social media landscape, and perhaps, I think, and I will ask her, see something in your process, see something in what you're doing that really resonates with her or has inspired her.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to go to Black for a bit, and then we're going to come back with Jazzy Ann.